Welcome to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast, the show that explores the background of Tolkien's amazing world from the very beginning. Welcome back to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. It is the end of June, and we have a new patron chat, a VIP patron chat with some VIP patrons who weren't able to join us last month. And so we changed the time a little bit. We have a different cast of characters, if I can call you a cast of characters. Barney is joining us, Norwegian Mayar, and Averiel. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out and to nerd out about Tolkien stuff with me. This week, we are discussing their stories about reading the books or watching the movies for the first time. But then Averiel posted an interesting question on rereads. How did your thoughts change? How long was it from when you read it one time to another time? As you got older, did your perspectives change on a future reading or a rewatching of the movies or something like that? So I'm excited to get into the details here. And welcome to all of you. So glad that you decided to join us. Who would like to kick us off? Somebody want to share their story about how they discovered Tolkien's works and get us going?
I'll start.
Barney, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Kick us off. Where were you? When were you? What was going on? How did this work out for you?
Well, it's been probably over 50 years now since I first read The Hobbit, but I recall a friend of mine recommended to me to read The Lord of the Flies. And I got it wrong. I picked up The Lord of the Rings instead.
Oh, yeah. Flies, rings. Okay.
I still haven't, to this day, have not read The Lord of the Flies, although I did recently watch the, I think it's a 4-episode Netflix series on it. So very interesting. I might read that one day. But anyway, I got it wrong. And I picked up The Lord of the Rings, and I quickly discovered I needed to start with The Hobbit. So I read The Hobbit. I think at that point I started school, my first year of college, and I had started the Fellowship of the Ring and read about 100 or 150 pages, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got involved in studies. I had to study hard my first year and blah, blah, blah. And well, all the years, I finally did pick up the Fellowship again because I had set it aside for a while. And then I really got hooked on it. And I finished The Lord of the Rings sometime while I was in college. I don't remember when. And I was hooked. And somewhere in there, I discovered the Silmarillion. Mm-hmm. And I was made aware of the Silmarillion. So I immediately jumped into the Silmarillion. And I personally was hooked from the first line.
Really?
There was Irulu, the one who in Arda is called Iluvatar. I think that's how it goes. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I was just hooked. And I was just fascinated by the whole concept of Tolkien, the world that he was creating. I was like amazed that anyone could do this,
Yeah.
And I've been hooked ever since. I had no trouble reading the Silmarillion. I've probably read it 5 times since. Mm-hmm. I know I've read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings at least 5 times. My most recent reread was probably somewhere between a year and 2 years ago.
Okay.
And that's the first reread I had done in many years. But I've been following your podcast and anything Lord of the Rings. I just gobble it up.
Yeah.
I really.
Yeah.
So that's my story about how,
Yeah. Yeah.
It hooked me from the start, man.
Very interesting.
And I'm still going strong,
Yeah. Yeah. So you discovered these stories 50 years ago. This would have been the late 60s?
We're talking mid-70s.
Mid-70s. Okay.
Wait, let's see. So yeah, that's about right.
Mid-70s. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. I'm doing math wrong in my head. So yeah, mid-70s, you discover this. And I'm sure for some of our listeners, they didn't. I mean, I was born in 1979, so I wasn't around yet. But I'm not a spring chicken either. So there are people who listen to this show who are much younger than I am. And I'm sure when you talk about world building today it almost feels mandatory. If you are a fantasy or a sci-fi author, then world building is just kind of one of those things that you have to do if you're writing a new series on something, right? It's just kind of assumed that you will also do some world building on some level. But back in the mid 70s, what was that like to come across? I mean, you not just the Fellowship of the Ring and the rest of the Lord of the Rings books and the Hobbit, but the Silmarillion, and have a book that reads to so many people like the Old Testament, and yet I'm sure it was lighting up these ideas in your mind that by that point there was no, like, you didn't see this in the movie theaters. You didn't like this, like the idea of even putting that in a theater would have been incredible. I mean, this is before Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What was that like?
Oh, it was, for me, it was, I couldn't believe that there was, how much bigger the whole legendarium was, so to speak, than just the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. That the fact that there was all of the before the first age, and then the first, second, and third age uh, before the Lord of the Rings just blew me away personally.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that happens when you read through the novels is that there are these little hints all over the place that there's something else. And I think I get what you're saying. This idea of like, okay, well, Tolkien might have the answer to Tom Bombadil or the rest of the story with the Ents or whatever. And then you go, okay, well, that makes sense. He would understand that. But then you open up the Silmarillion and you're like at the beginning of time and, before time started. And that is so much more massive. It must have been shocking as you continue to study these things through your life to realize just how deep and wide he had answers for so many of those questions that people were like, even going back and listening to interviews from him back in that time period, he knew the answers to the questions. And I think that must have been shocking to people, right?
Yes, absolutely. It was shocking to me. And I have to confess, I haven't read all of the letters. I've read most of Unfinished Tales, but not all of it. I've kind of scrolled through it, if you will.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right.
But I've read most of the work, like Children of Hurin, Fall of Numenor. I've got atlases of Middle Earth and on my bookshelf and all that. I do sometimes struggle to read every sentence, so to speak, or every paragraph, because I get bored with some of it.
Right.
And so I'll move ahead and find something that I'm interested in and read it. That's kind of what I'm doing with the appendices right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really interested in all of the descendants of Anarion, for instance.
Right. When it's just a list of names, it doesn't really hold as much meaning until, yeah.
So, so for whatever that's worth,
Right.
But the whole world, like I said, it just fascinates me, and to this day, I can't get enough of it. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really great story. Well, let's pivot to Wendy Averiel, if I can. Is it okay to say your first name? I can always edit that out if you want me to.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Yeah. Why don't you? This was your topic idea. Why don't you share a little bit about your story? What was your journey like?
Absolutely. By the way, my audio went out for a bit, so I am in a spot where I might lose connection. If I do, then I'll get back in later.
I'll let you know if it happens.
But right now, I'm stationary. Headed to a Paul Simon concert in the Berkshires.
Yeah,
it's very exciting.
Oh,
yeah.
Exciting.
So anyway, it was funny because I totally resonated with Barney's story. I read The Hobbit in like 1975 when I was 11.
Okay.
And I fell in love. And it was so great. And my brother, who was instigating all of this, my older brother, 2 years older, said there's another part of the story called The Lord of the Rings. And people didn't really know about The Lord of the Rings in those days, like 1974, 75. It was still kind of an underground book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started reading The Lord of the Rings, and the first part was just difficult for me to get through at that age. But he said, you've got to stick with it. And so I still remember that feeling of reading The Shadow of the Past and being so nervous. And then I got another friend of mine to read it. We would talk about how sort of, how sort of scary and dark and, foreboding it was. And then we would imagine that in our neighborhood, maybe there was a ring out there that we could find and it would transport us. And so I just fell in love after that and kept reading and then reread it a lot as a teenager over and over. And there were no books, and the Silmarillion was not out when I read that book in,
Right.
like I said, around 1974, 75. I think, did it come out in 76 or 77?
That sounds about right. I don't remember specifically the date. I think it was 76.
Well, so I read it right after it came out, the Silmarillion.
Yeah, probably. I have a
Yeah.
copy that was I've talked about this on the show. My dad got me into Lord of the Rings stuff, and
Yeah.
I have a copy of his original version of the Silmarillion still. He's still
Nice.
around, but he just at some point he was like, "Hey, you'll enjoy these more than I will. Here you go."
Nice.
So yeah, I think that edition was the 76 edition, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
I could run upstairs and go grab it, but yeah.
So we started reading that, and I just, like you, collected all things Tolkien, bestiaries and calendars, and there were these Hildebrandt Tolkien calendars that were coming out in those years. And I just continue to this day to love all things Tolkien. And I remember I was walking into the movie theater. This was like the opening night. And my brother had already seen it, I guess, a couple of hours before. We were going to the midnight show because that's what we managed to get tickets for.
Yeah, of the Fellowship.
And
Yeah.
my brother calls me and he said, "Where are you? How come you're not in the theater right now?" I'm like, "I'm walking in, I promise."
You can't be late for this. Yeah, that's another story. The idea of like the films actually becoming real and then actually being good. I was in college at the time, and I've talked about this, how I would come home for Christmas break for the holidays. And that's when the films were in the theaters. And I got to, year after year, enjoy it with my dad and my brother and maybe a friend who came with me or whatever. And that was such a fun way to celebrate the holidays with family around something like that. It was really just for my lifespan that just hit right exactly at the right time. And it was amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was very nice to see, like, there were things, of course, like as a reader, you might find, I didn't love the way they did that one thing, but those were small potatoes compared to how beautifully it was done overall.
Oh, yeah.
And at that time, I used to play on this, they called it a mush. It was a non-graphical game that you played by sort of writing in text what you were doing and where you were going.
Okay. Yeah, like muds?
Yes, like a mud.
Like a mud. Yeah,
It's called Elendor, and it was big. There were a lot of people that played that game, and whenever you got on, you would find people, and you got to know people. I know a cop from Columbus, Ohio, through that game, and another guy who lives in California. Just a bunch of people, and it became just a fun thing to do. And especially with the movies, it got very big until, of course, like games moved on from those.
Sure.
So, but that was a fun thing. And it also it was a different angle into sort of thinking about and enjoying Tolkien's world and Tolkien's imaginary, the universe that feels real to me, to be honest, even though it's not real. I still feel like it's a bit real. And I don't know. So that's my story. I still have what we used to call the Tolkien shelf in my house, bits and pieces of all the Tolkien shelf. Like everyone knows, that's sort of in my house. My siblings will come to my house if they want to look at the books. I mean, I'm talking about the original ones that we read as kids and then kind of collected.
Yeah.
So that's me.
Yeah.
And
that's really cool.
That's doing this.
Oh yeah. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for supporting what I do and all that.
I'll say one more thing. Your podcast is in so many ways like a reread as well, because it opens up my mind to new ways of thinking, and the way that you're going very methodically and very close, with this close reading method of each part. It's just making things clear to me that I'd never seen in the text or never thought about or missed or just had forgotten about because it's been a while.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Let me talk on that for just a moment, but I definitely have some questions for you. That is something I'm glad you would appreciate that. I'm glad people enjoy that. It was one of those things that when you are creating content, you have ideas for like, I think this is something people want, and then you try it. It's like creating a startup company where you're like, I think this is a product and there's a market for it, right? But I mean, you guys know how it is to read through these books. Oftentimes they're gripping, and you just keep turning pages. The scrolling joke is because I talked in the pre-show about something and turning pages on a book, but I said scroll to the back, which is funny for language reasons. But we won't get into that. But my point being that oftentimes you pick up the novels on a reread, and especially as they become more familiar to you, you kind of just go, right? And then an hour disappears and you're like 2 chapters later, and you've just processed it, maybe in a slightly different way. But to take everything just sentence by sentence, word by word, and do like a very pseudo academic, I can't say that I'm an academic on this, but to try to bring that energy to it, I was worried, would this be too boring? Is this too detailed? Is this too slow? But I'm glad you guys enjoy that.
No, I would call you an academic on it, Tom.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Wendy,
I enjoy it.
Yeah, thanks. Wendy, you mentioned this is another thing that our younger listeners will maybe never have experienced. The time when the internet was not what it is today, and the idea that you could play a role-playing game in text on a server that wasn't even necessary. Like I remember playing these on local bulletin board systems. This was a thing, right? And you would log in, and the ones that I would log in towards the end of the 90s, before the internet really took off and MMO RPGs became a thing, you would it only had so many phone lines, so you would have to wait till one of the phone lines was open, log in, and then I think I played a game similar called like Red Dragon, or the I don't know, Tavern of the Red Dragon or something like that. And you would do your little thing, you go on a little quest, maybe you'd get an item, maybe you'd send somebody a message or a letter, and then like that kind of thing. That just brings back so many memories. I'm sure some people can remember this, but a lot of people don't. But to get into your topic a little bit deeper, when have you done rereads, and how did your perspective change as you did rereads or got older?
Ooh. So I feel like, when I was younger, I was reading to fill in the gaps in what I knew about the books, and just soaking in, let's call it the lore, your term, or often used term. But then later I found that my perspective shifted as I had children. The way that people worked with each other in society, the way that people, kind of thought about life and protecting, just was another view. As I've gotten older, I sort of see the mortality aspect in Tolkien's own writing, and the immortality versus mortality concept, and the way that that's portrayed is really interesting. I think the other thing that I noticed in the most recent reread, which I have to confess that I have got stuck at the Two Towers, and I haven't gotten past it because it started getting dark, and I was like, oh no,
Oh,
too
no,
dark.
Dark and scary. Yeah.
But I think that I noticed a lot more about the nature writing,
Yeah.
the pages of nature writing, and interestingly, I read some British mystery recently that was written around the same period, and it also had pages of nature writing. It was also set in a similar part of England that Tolkien grew up. And I just found that to be very interesting, that it was similar in style in so many ways. Those, the unfolding of the landscape as they moved forward,
Right.
was just beautifully written, and something that I'd never noticed quite as clearly until this last reread. So every time I feel like I get something different.
Yeah.
And I could go on at length, but I think I will not.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why I try to point out every time he points out a tree, like actually names a tree. It's not just the trees on the road were shading the path. It's the beech trees or whatever. It's very intentional, and it clearly shows both how he appreciated nature, but also felt not just appreciated, but felt personally connected, like knowing the trees by name, that sort of thing. Which is, it's a very Treebeard kind of thing, but you see that later with Treebeard. But yeah, that's really, really interesting too. Do you think it's obvious that when he wrote these stories, he was already a dad? Like, going back to the idea of like being a parent changes your perspective on the world, makes you, it makes you think bigger and broader. It makes you feel more, I don't know, invested in the future and in society and those types of things. Do you think it's obvious that he's a dad?
I think that's really interesting. I would love others to answer that. I think that would be cool to hear.
Yeah.
The other guys here.
Yeah, Norwegian Meyer hasn't had a chance to talk yet. We're going to get to your story in just a second. But what do you think? Do you think it's obvious that Tolkien was a dad?
I think in a way that, like, sort of how I think about Bilbo and Frodo a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That the interactions between them is not like all, I wouldn't say lovey-dovey, but the meaning. Like, it's a lot more depth to it, like a mutual respect in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like shows that he is a dad, because it's not just one way affection from a father to a son or something like that, but it's more of a mutual, like, back and forth relationships.
Yeah, it feels really well-rounded.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think that's an interesting relationship to point to. What do you think, Barney?
Yeah, to me, it is obvious that, well, we know, but it's
Sure.
obvious that he was this started out as a children's story, right?
Yeah.
And I think he was, it seems pretty obvious to me that he's trying to basically, almost like he's trying to please his children, with the writing of these books. And I think Bombadil came from that thought too, that he, Bombadil was thrown in there for to please his children, to make his children happy, or to I know I've read some letters or some commentary, and maybe you, Tom, have even said something about that in one of your or several of your episodes, perhaps. But I think it's pretty obvious that he had children.
Yeah. And a man from his time. It's interesting because of how long ago he was born, and that generation being, for the most part, gone at this point. But I can understand my generation and the way my peers parent. I can understand my parents' generation and the trends in parenting there. For example, like, my parents are baby boomer generation, right, in their 70s, and their generation, I understand that, like, for my father's generation, like parents' generation, his father was rather emotionally detached, and that was kind of a trend with that generation. But I have to wonder what Tolkien's experiences were with his own parents being a child. I can't think of many times that he's really talked about that. But when we look at the evidence we have for the way he interacted with his children and the relationships he built with them into their adulthoods, I think that there's some really interesting things in there. I'm sure he must have been, I don't know, the idea that he and Christopher had such a close relationship, and Christopher devoted his life to working on the things his father already loved and created, must have been extremely flattering as a parent. Like, oh, one of my kids loves my stuff and me so much that they just want to keep doing this. It must have been an amazing feeling for him. I don't know. It's hard for me to know for sure what that was like, but I don't know. Do you have any suspicions about that? Does anybody else? Does this ring any bells?
So I read once, I read at some point that he sent a lot of his Lord of the Rings stories that were Lord of the Rings in development as it was being written. He sent in letters to Christopher when Christopher was stationed think in South Africa during World War II.
Yes, that's
And
right.
there was not a lot that was much more dangerous than being an RAF pilot in World War II. That was not like an easy way to survive the war.
Sure.
So I have to imagine that he must have been incredibly concerned about his son and his son's life. And obviously, having seen up close what war is like, knowing the reality of that, I think that also brings this perspective into the battles and the danger and the sort of sense um, of the sort of the real sort of visceral sense that there is a world on the edge here. And for him personally, that must have felt true as he's writing The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I can't. I try as best I can to learn more about the world through other people's perspectives. The first thing I always try, and this is having been a philosophy major and a religious studies major in college. But one of the things that I really got into doing back then was when I would read somebody's stuff, whether it was a philosopher or an author or whatever, I would try to give them the benefit of the doubt. So many of my peers would read something and they would immediately go, well, I don't believe that. I disagree. And they would try to find all the reasons to poke holes in it. And as opposed to going, but what if this is true? What if this is accurate? Right. And putting yourself in the author's shoes. And so I try to do that as much as I can, especially with Tolkien and his work. And there are just some things that I don't have that experience, right? I didn't serve in war and I don't have children who have, and hopefully I never will. But to imagine what that is like and how that influenced your life is something that I'm not really sure exactly how that works, but I can try to understand it through Tolkien, This is a great conversation so far, but we have to get to Norwegian Maiar and hear your story. Where did you discover Tolkien's work and how has that evolved over time?
So for me, it was actually the movies. My cousin showed it to me when I was, 8. I think that was in 2002.
Okay. So 8 years old. That's pretty young. Yeah. I mean, some of the scenes in those movies are pretty scary.
Yeah, it was probably a couple of nightmares in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Sure.
But yeah, so it started with the movies, and I have the wildest imagination known to man as a kid. And we just love running out and playing the sort of different characters and just
yeah. So did you grow up real quick? Did you grow up in Norway? Yeah. Did you?
Yes, I did.
So were you near wilderness and trees and rocks and things like that? Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in an island far outside of Bergen, on the west coast.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of big forests, and you could really picture yourself in that world.
Yeah. So did you run around wondering if you'd find a secret ring somewhere, kind of like Wendy did?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I grew up in a fairly, I don't know, suburban area, but there were definitely some places where there were trees and parks and forests, and my friends and I would go into those areas. We'd take our bikes down this trail and then get lost in the woods a little bit and then find the trail again and then go home and that kind of thing. So I can totally resonate with that experience of okay, people who grow up near the wilderness have a different appreciation for wilderness than people who grow up in just cities and have never experienced that. So absolutely. Sorry, go on, continue on with your story.
So then it just kept evolving. We loved the movies, and I think I was probably around 15 when I read The Lord of the Rings, and just immediately the difference from the movies to the books. I just love that. I was able to say differentiate the movie was one thing and the books were one thing, and just really appreciate both. And I was just a sponge for all Tolkien after that.
Nice. So at 15 years old, you already noticed the differences. Do you remember which things stood out the most?
I think the most was a lot of the conversations, how in depth they were about a lot of things, the Council of the Ring,
Council of Elrond.
Elrond. Sorry.
Yeah,
and just a lot of those things, how much more in depth. And I remember also the ends were really cool. to me at that age, and just how much more actually happened around that time where Pippin and Merry were in Fangorn. And just a lot of those in-depth things of
Right.
so not necessarily the things that were cut out in the movies, but just how much more in-depth everything was in the books.
Right. One of the things that always hits me funny about the Ents is that the movie adaptation is not how they're described in the books. It is very different. They seem to be much more fleshy and have dark human skin rather than bark and as tree-like as they are in the movies. Although I'm not sure that would have transitioned as well for like a visual medium. But it always hits me as difficult ever since the movies came out to picture the Ents and to actually like visualize them in a satisfactory way that doesn't come across as just somehow odd or creepy. I don't know. Am I alone in that? How do you feel about the Ents, Norwegian Meyer?
No, I can agree to that. Like, but I think just because of the movies and like that's how I was introduced to the whole the lore.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's like the only thing I can picture.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to see them as being more human-like and less tree-like.
Yeah.
But that's how the books picture them. Wendy, what do you think? How do you feel about Ents and the way they're pictured?
You know, you're right. I actually didn't think about it with the Ents. I thought about it with some of the depictions of certain characters.
Uh-huh.
But it's true. Like the Ents felt more. They were more smushy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're more human-like.
Right. They were not like rooted trees. And you sort of picture, if you think about it, like the Ents were woken up by the elves, but they were trees, and then they sort of became these beings. Or maybe you could say it was the other way around. But you're right; they were very tree-like, but they weren't fully tree-like.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah. I guess my I'm going to pivot for a second and say some of the characters felt very different from how I pictured them, but it is really, and I won't say who. Well, I will say.
Yeah, let's go. Let's get into it.
Elrond to me did not look like Hugo Weaving. I just don't see that there.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, it was a great portrayal, but the visual wasn't right for me. Aragorn, I think, I liked Aragorn.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we all liked Aragorn. I mean, yeah, his attitude's a little different. Viggo did an amazing job.
Well done.
Yes. I'm curious. Let's talk about Elrond real quick. Who can you think of an actor that you would have replaced Elrond with, or just a description?
No, I can't think of an actor. I just can't.
It's tricky.
But maybe it's very tricky.
Yeah.
It is one of the hardest things because, I guess the descriptions of Elrond make him so sort of different, special, and, both very attractive, very handsome, but also very wise.
Mm-hmm.
All this sort of mixture of characteristics. And I've watched the Amazon series, and they're not quite getting it right either. But hey,
uh-huh.
I mean, that's just me. I'm sure a lot of people disagree with that, but
sure.
That is one place where I would have said no, not quite. Theoden, well done.
Yeah.
I think the movie did a very good job of two characters, and one was Boromir.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I did not understand Boromir's arc and psychology until I saw the depiction in the movie. I always thought of him as a bad guy. No spoilers here, right? I always thought of him as kind of like the creepy bad guy, from forever.
Right.
And that movie kind of opened my eyes, and that was very cool.
I think that's a great point, because I went through a similar thing. Also, I was still fairly young when the movies came out and hadn't studied any of this as much, obviously. But yeah, I remember being a teenager and reading through the books the first time and always feeling bad, like Boromir, he's not a good guy, right? But like, it's not as simple as that. And I think that there's something that comes with getting older and maturing and understanding limitation, like your own limitations, how much you intend to do good, but don't always follow through or are tempted by something else. Like the nuance of being a human being and dealing with temptation or dealing with duty or dealing with expectations of others or your parents or your job, like, and how that starts to chip away at you. And you end up with, like, I don't know, you end up in Boromir's situation where you're going, I think that there's the right thing to do, and I feel like I'm the right person who's supposed to do it, but everyone else is saying that something else is the right thing. And so how do I do that? And then deep down being like a legit good guy. Like, he had very positive relationships with the hobbits until the moment where the ring finally took over and he was tempted too hard and tried to take it, like, yeah. Barney, what do you think about all this? What comes to mind?
Well, I love the way Peter Jackson developed that Boromir's character arc. I hadn't, my next reread, I'll have to really pay attention to how that goes in the book versus what he did in the movie. I love the movies, by the way, and I know that, they changed some stuff, as we all know, and for the theater. But what you said earlier kind of resonated with me about how you tend to give people how was it you worded it, instead of saying, "Oh no, that's not right." They
Benefit of the doubt.
benefit of the doubt. There you go. I just
Trying to see other people's perspectives, especially when they're
exactly.
like
And
supposed to be good at the thing they're doing,
Right.
Yeah.
And I tend to do that myself. And with the movies, that's been my attitude. I just think it's so wonderful that the way he did that and created that and exposed the Lord of the Rings to the rest of the world, people who haven't read the books like us, and look at
Norwegian Meyer.
He
Yeah.
discovered it through the movies,
Right.
and that's awesome.
This conversation has kind of gone in this interesting direction because we're now comparing the movies and the books. And Norwegian, you kind of set us on this path. Are there any other details in that in your journey? Like, have you now that you're no longer 15 years old and reading the books and have seen the movies, like, how has your perspective changed? Is there anything else that really stands out? You bet that living in Florida changes the way I dress every year. During the summer, it is way too hot and humid to not wear something that is light and breathable. And now that I found Quince, I've been wearing their clothing all the time. I wear my linen shorts as often as I possibly can, and I've been so much cooler even inside the house. I haven't had to run the air conditioning as much, which is kind of crazy. And right now you can get Quince European linen pants and shirts, perfect for this weather, starting at just $34. Their tees are also soft and easy to wear. Lightweight cotton sweaters are perfect for cooler summer nights. They have options for everything. Plus, their prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they work directly with ethical factories to cut out the middleman, so you're not paying for the markup, you're just paying for the quality. Plus, I've noticed that they have some other things that I'm very tempted to get. Everything from sofas to ceramic cookware, premium bedding, all sorts of stuff. But if I was to recommend just one thing, go get some linen shorts. It will change your summer, I promise. So go elevate your summer wardrobe. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ringslore.
I think like just a lot of the small details, like how would you picture the ends? And in the books, Treebeard says that the evil lord made trolls in mockery of the Ents. So, like, would they look something like trolls or something like that?
Yeah.
But I think just a lot of those like small details, like everywhere, just like drizzled in, that you just makes you start thinking. And I do a lot more of that now. Like, I've read it probably, I don't know, 10 times.
Right.
And it just like it's always a new thing that like just gets my thoughts going to like, oh, maybe that will work in here or there, and then you get something from the Silmarillion that, oh, okay, maybe that can work out in something which isn't explained in the Lord of the Rings, or something like that.
Right. Do you? You bring up the Ents, and I think the Ents change in the movies is probably the best change. And I'm just saying this off the cuff. Maybe something else will come up, and I'll be like, "Oh no, that one's even better." But that to make them look more tree-like absolutely works better in a film, in my perspective. But it was always my misunderstanding early on because I didn't read close enough the first time. And I always just kind of visualized them more tree-like. I don't know if that was because I saw some artwork where they were drawn more tree-like or something, but I feel like that works. Is there, in your estimation, is there a change? We can talk about the changes in between the movie and the books that didn't work or were not as accurate. Are there other changes where you go, I'm so glad they made this change? It's a tricky question right off the cuff because there's a lot to think through.
Yeah, but I think also the dynamic between the hobbits is a cool one, because I feel like in the books Sam is a lot more how would you say it, subservient? No, maybe not.
Yeah. He especially early on, he very much is. There is, as I discussed on recent episodes, there is very much a class stratification between the way he interacts with Frodo and Pippin compared to the way they interact with him, you know?
And I think just that the thing that I feel like they changed is that it's more like you have Frodo and then you have Merry, Pippin, and Sam, at least to a certain degree. And I feel like that, at least for me, I think that dynamic works a lot more. Instead of that aristocracy sort of in which Pippin and Merry have. Right.
Yeah, I feel like in the movies, Merry and Pippin and Sam are much more clearly defined as with simple expectations for what their personalities are supposed to be like, if that makes sense. Like, oh, Merry's the mischievous one. Pippin's the ignorant one. Sam is the good-intentioned, friendly one. And you're right, that distance seems less. And it's easier for a movie audience to grab onto those personalities and just kind of hold on to that, as opposed to a much more
it's also thing. Could it also be to make them like actually feel younger?
Yes.
Seeing as they're younger than Frodo.
Right. Yeah. And okay, that was another thing that Wendy brought up. The whole, like, Frodo being 50 years old, leaving on his journey, Bilbo being 50 years old, living on his journey. But hobbits have different lifespans. So 50 to him wasn't really 50 to us. Like, I'm not quite 50 yet, but I don't know that I would want to do a journey like that at 50 years old, as opposed to being 20 or 30. Like, your body just doesn't work the same way. But in Hobbit culture, it was more like, say, a 30 something going off on a journey, which feels much more reasonable. Do you feel like that shift in the movies was a good idea? Because they do all come across younger in that kind of way. But does that feel accurate to you, or does that feel, how do you feel about that?
To me, at least, it feels like, would you say, like, it seems more believable.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that they are younger and not some 50-year-old going on a trip with a bunch of 20-year-olds.
Right.
So,
yeah. What Barney or oh, sorry.
I think you, go
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt?
No, you're good. It's this is how chats go because it's all online. But go ahead.
You covered in a recent episode, I think, the aristocracy that existed in the Shire.
Yeah.
With Merry and Pippin being, considered aristocracy.
Well, basically, Pippin was a princeling without really the full title. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that gave me a new perspective on, thinking about how they did that in the movies. I hadn't really thought about the fact that they were aristocracy, and Sam was more of a more subservient role.
Yeah, he was very blue collar, farmer, like and gardener, that kind of thing.
I don't know that came across in the movies as much so as it did in the books.
Mm-hmm.
Like Norwegian was saying, and you were saying, I kind of like the way they gave them each their own personalities. I think it was a little easier to digest for the, for the movie watchers being introduced to it. So
right.
But yeah, when you covered that, I don't know, 3 or 4 episodes ago, maybe.
Mhm.
That gave me a new perspective on it. So anyway,
Interesting. Wendy, what do you think about the Hobbits?
I think the Hobbits are, like, there's like definitely a lot of comic relief in the movie Hobbits.
Hmm.
And I think that's fine. It's also really true to the story in a lot of ways. The Fool of a Took and all of that stuff. And I love the way they all are there to support each other. And that's also really like, I love that you feel the sense of camaraderie and joy when they reunite, etc. I guess you feel that in the books, you feel it in the movies. There's more detail, of course, in the books. Uh, and there are things that are simplified, like the feelings of, say, Pippin when he wants he desires the Palantir.
Mhm.
You get those exposed, obviously, in the book more. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I answered the question right because I was
Yeah.
also sort of focused on writing a comment that I have to drop now. I'm so sorry.
Oh, well, thank you we're
This
about
has
to
been
wrap up in
wonderful
a
and
little bit.
delightful.
Yeah, thank you for joining us and taking the time. Have fun with the concert.
Thank you so much. And I will join
Wendy.
again sometime soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Nice
Hope you're able
meeting
to
you
join us.
guys. Nice meeting you, Norwegian
too,
Meyer
Wendy.
and Barney D. Bye.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Yeah, she brings up the relationship between the hobbits. Rereading through the first few chapters and like the stuff that I'm currently going through, there's a level of familiarity and comfort, especially between Pippin and Frodo, that comes across in the dialogue. The way that they kind of they poke at each other a little bit, but they're just like it's all good intentioned, like that. Like any of us do. I mean, if you spend any serious amount of time with anybody you're close to and everything isn't all polite and rosy the whole time, it's just like, hey, get up. It's morning, that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot there. Is there anything from, and this is, we're getting close to the end of the episode, so eventually we're going to have to wrap this up. But you guys have me thinking about those first few chapters in the book, which I've been going through, and the episode that actually just came out for patrons as we record this today and will be out tomorrow for everybody is about the first time that they have to hide from one of the Nazgul. The Ringwraith comes by on the horse, and in the movie it's different, but in the book Frodo hides in one area and Pippin and Sam are in a slightly different area off the side of the road, and they hide. And the descriptions of this black rider with a black horse and a cloak and an invisible face. Although when you guys get to listen to the episode, I don't know if you've listened to it yet, I describe how the use of the word invisible there is implying that the hood is covering the face, so the face is invisible, but in actuality, the face is invisible, right? And how that's like that part of the movies is, of course, streamlined and condensed, and then very quickly becomes the chase to the ford and all of that. But in the books, there's some nuance there and a little bit different. And going through this, it reminded me of thinking back to the first time I read through this, and just the quality of the fact that not knowing something is scarier than knowing something. If that makes sense. Like anybody who writes and directs a horror movie knows that the monster is at its scariest before you know what it looks like. And I think that was something Tolkien was grabbing onto. Did you guys feel that? Do you remember seeing the wraiths for the first time and being like, oh dear, what is that? Like what is going on here? Like clearly we know the lore now, but how did you feel back then? And let's talk to Norwegian real quick first, because you were younger. You were 8 years old watching those movies. How did that feel?
Yeah, I remember I agree, to not knowing, but sort of that expecting what it is, like right before the reveal. But to me, it was the Balrog in Moria.
Mm.
Just the whole drums in the deep and the build up with all the goblins and just that fiery light coming out of the caverns.
Right.
I remember I was so scared.
Yeah. Wow. All of those goblins are scared of something. It must be real bad. Right.
But like when it was revealed, like just this huge, like what you say, typical monster, it wasn't that bad. But I remember like that build up was really frightening.
Yeah. Interesting point. What about you, Barney? Do you remember thinking about ring wraiths as a younger man? And
I don't remember like my first few times I read it. I do know that in the movies, I thought this was one of the scenes. If I had complaints about anything, it was very few, but this was one of them. I thought the scene where they were hiding underneath the tree root and the ring wraith literally bent down and sniffed.
right.
That was way too close. I think if he gets that close, he's gonna find him.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure it wasn't described that way in the book, but when you were making your comments, it makes me want to go and read that passage from the book again.
Yeah. Well, that's
exactly
the episode,
compare.
right?
Because the first thing I think of sometimes when I'm listening or it's being described like you've described it, the thing that comes to mind right away is the movie, because I know the movies very well. I can't always remember the text like word for word in order to compare. Makes me want to go back and read it again though, just to see how it compares to the movie again. And you described it very well, and that anticipation of not knowing what this thing is, what it's looked like. I agree. That's that's the scariest moment right there.
Right. And Tolkien does that a number of times. I think the Balrog example is a good example.
Balrog I thought that was well done.
I mean, heck, in the books,
I can't remember how it compares to the books.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's described as smoke and flame and that sort of thing. The wings are the shadows on the wall behind him, like that sort of description. Maybe not on the wall behind him, but the wings are described as shadows, which continues people debating, like, are there actual wings? Or were there is that what the fire was casting? And it looked like big giant wings, which would have been intimidating anyway. Right. But Tolkien does this a few times. In fact, I think one of the most brilliant things he does is he doesn't give us Sauron incarnate. We don't see in the books, and we see in the movies, we basically have Sauron dressed up as Morgoth, basically. But in the books, like there's descriptions about the eye and how he's seeking and reaching out everywhere, trying to understand what's going on in the movements of his enemies and those kinds of things. But the tower with the eye is very much a movie.
As in the spirit of Sauron.
Right.
Sauron dressed up as Morgoth. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But we don't actually get Sauron marches out of the Black Gate or something in some sort of outfit or as a flaming body or anything like that. And I think that's a good decision. The fact that he, for the entire duration of the Lord of the Rings books, is not to be seen. Like he's scary because we never actually meet him. Like we meet him in the Palantir, or we meet him in these moments of the clashing of power or that sort of thing, but we don't actually meet him in the flesh. And this is just off the top of my head right now, but what that reminds me of is the way when you talk about the devil and how people are like, well, it's not, he doesn't have goat hooves and a pitchfork the way that like medieval books would draw him. But that sort of thing. But what that leaves is this feeling of like, yeah, but then what does the devil look like? And that, it's just now left to your imagination. It could be the most horrifying thing you could ever think of, but you don't really know. And there's something about that is just scarier than knowing what you're looking at.
Although I thought Peter Jackson did a really good job of sort of maintaining that mystique, because really the only time you see Sauron in the movies is a flashback to the end of the Second Age, basically, when the ring gets cut off of his finger, right?
Yes. I'm pretty sure.
I think the rest of the time it's the eye and it's the voice
Right.
that we see throughout the movies in real time.
Right. He almost put Sauron at the battle at the end, fighting Aragorn. Almost, but then replaced it with a troll, and that's why the Aragorn's fighting something big, and it had to be a troll, which is a little funny because, like, can Aragorn really parry a swing of a troll? Troll's weapon? I'm not really sure about that, but that's still a better decision than having Sauron march out in full armor.
Probably more likely to parry a troll than Sauron.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, there is that.
In the movies, he cut the head off of the mouth of Sauron, right?
Yes. Yeah, he does in the extended edition. Yeah.
In the extended edition. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I can't separate the two.
I think
I have the extended edition and recently watched them with my grandson, but
I think that is one of the differences is the cutting off of the head. I could be wrong, but so if I'm wrong, let me know. But just off the top of my head, I think that is one of the differences
too. So.
Yeah, there's a lot. This is one of those things where people, like, I do a number of different lore shows about things, and I've been doing this show for a few years now, and my other shows for 6 or 7 years now. And it's just one of those things where it's like, guys, there's so much to remember. I don't like, I have to look things up. People will ask me questions like, you'll know this. And I'm like, I think it's this, but I'm also not 100% sure that my memory is absolutely correct every time, because it isn't. That's why I research things before I record episodes. But yeah, it's just kind of funny. But hey, we're getting close to the end here. Is there, let's go back through both of you. Is there anything else? Let's go back to Norwegian Meyer. Anything else you wanted to share or talk about before we wrap this up? Any other thoughts?
I'm just happy to be able to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you made this work. And this earlier time, that for anybody who doesn't know, previously we did these a little bit later in the early evening my time, which is easier for people in the US, but not so easy for people in certain international places. So we shifted it up a little bit earlier, and you're able to join us. I think we'll continue to kind of shift things month to month, make it a little bit easier for some people, and, have different people able to join maybe. But we'll see where that goes. But I appreciate you taking the time to be here. Is there any shout outs, anything you want to put out into the world, or if you want people to get a hold of you, anything you want to do with that?
No, I'm just happy to be here. But yeah, maybe would love to hear people's thoughts on how they thoughts on the magic system in that world.
Yeah,
that's always been a thing for me.
Yeah,
to how does it actually work?
Yeah, and yeah, this comes up pretty regularly in my episodes. But yeah, it is definitely something that a lot of people have made assumptions about, that Tolkien never meant to be. And yeah, it's interesting. Well, thank you for joining us. Thanks for taking the time. Barney, what about you? Anything else you want to share before we finish this?
Oh, before I forget about this, I love the way you've addressed the issue of magic over the many episodes, because it makes it more believable, I guess, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not truly magic as we know magic in the world today. It's just the I love the way you've described how magic works for what the hobbits perceive as magic by the elves, and how it truly works. You know, and but anyway, moving on. No, I don't really have a shout out or anything, but I just want to say thanks for doing what you do, because it's just a never ending source of entertainment for me. I mean, even when I'm caught up on the episodes, which, like I said, I don't know. I said that in the pre-show. I accumulate episodes and let them build up for my next road trip, and then I listen. I get caught up. Once I get caught up, I will go back and start listening from the very beginning again.
Oh, wow.
Because by the time, I've forgotten about all that, and it's just as entertaining for me now. So I just really appreciate what you do. And the one topic that I can't get out of my head that I could talk about it forever is Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, right.
I want to know more about Bombadil. I think the last episode that you did, you were talking about if you could ask Tolkien a question, what would it be?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that jumped to mind right away was Tom Bombadil. I just want, where did he come from? Who is he? Why can he make the ring disappear? It doesn't affect him at all, So,
Yeah. It's something many of us absolutely. If you look at the number of posts about this online,
yes, yeah. So
yeah, it's nice to have things that he didn't solve or didn't put answer too concretely, because again, it's that mysterious thing, right? Like in the case of Tom Bombadil, it's not a scary mystery thing, but when we as human beings, when we don't know something, it becomes way more interesting to us than when we did. Absolutely. If we do, like if he had simply flat out said, "Here's what's up with Tom Bombadil," we wouldn't be talking about it anymore, or at least very briefly be talking about it, right?
True, that's very true. So it's fun just to speculate, on all that stuff. So
Tom
Bombadil, Ungoliant,
all the mysteries that are still lingering. Yeah. Well, thank you for your compliments. I'm flattered, and I really do appreciate you guys and your continued support and taking the time to hang out and talk Tolkien with me. It is always fun for me to be able to do this with it. But most of the time, I've explained this in the past, I'm sitting here in my office doing this by myself. I don't have a co-host, right? So like to bring you guys on and be able to get your perspectives on things is super informative and just fun. So I appreciate you taking the time.
It is fun. Yes.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for your support, and to all of our patrons, patreon.com/LOTR Lorecast. If you'd like to get the ad-free episodes, there's tons of those where I go into even further deep detail, or you can sign up as a VIP patron and join us on a chat like this in the future. We would love to have more of you. There's a bunch of you, and thank you to all of you. But if anyone else wants to join, or if anyone who already is a VIP patron wants to jump in, don't be scared. This is super fun. It's very casual, and we'd love to have you be a part of it. But I'm going to take a quick break and then do the regular outro stuff. I'll see you on the other side. Thanks again to all of the patrons who help support the show and make this happen, and especially to our VIP patrons. I will be reading out the whole list in just a minute, but also welcome to our newest patron, GB. Thank you for signing up and joining us and being a part of this. And again, if you'd like to join us on a future VIP patron chat, we'd love to have you. So come join us, and thank you to all of our VIP patrons. Let's see if I can do it without messing up. Fulcrum, David S., Daniel Nightweaver, Capenna, Richard J., TJT, AK Music Lover, Barney D., Azel Razzle, Blade of Andoril, Lori B., Norwegian Myar, Mason Weathertop, Gimli a Break, Divine Madman, Rosie Rose, Huon is my hero, Aldarian is right, The Bestest Boy, Party Snacks, Avariel, Norwegianius, Artemis, Kira C., Das S., Silver Star, My Name is August West, and Silver Hobbit 414. Thank you for your continued support. If any of you have ideas for the next patron chat for next month, feel free to comment or send me a message on Patreon. You're welcome to start brainstorming now, and we can set it up ahead of time. Thanks again for being here, and have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. If you'd like to learn more about other fantasy worlds, check out my other podcasts, The Elder Scrolls Lorecast, The Witcher Lorecast, and more at robotsradio.net. If you'd like to reach out, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a note on Twitter at robots_radio, or join our amazing community on the Robots Radio Discord. There are links in the show notes, or just search Robots Radio Discord, or find the link on robotsradio.net. I'll see you next time.